Move to adopt the agenda.
You got a motion for approval. It's been properly second. Discussion. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Next item we have is report of the attorney for executive session. Mr. Smith.
Mr. Chairman and members of council, we have two items that qualify for executive session. TRC Propco Inc. versus SC DOT et al. That is pending litigation. It's a road closure request. And item 4B, transportation sales tax expenditure, that is for the receipt of legal advice as it relates to those issues.
All right.
That concludes my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a question about the first one there?
Please.
Reference to road closure. Is that something that staff have reviewed and recommend?
That is something that we have reviewed, and Mr. Livingston.
Yes.
And it's my understanding that staff does not oppose the request, but it's something that has to come before council and have you act on as it relates to that. And unless you've got some questions about it,
That's the reason why the executive said, just in case you have a question about it.
yes, sir.
Anybody have a
But
question
we
about
don't oppose that issue.
Well, we have to go back there anyway.
it? All right, well, we got to go back there anyway, so.
Yeah, we'll take it up and briefly, yeah, it won't take long for that. Okay, thank you, Mr. Livingston. That concludes your report, Mr. Smith?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Next, we have third reading.
Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
We have outside counsel on this? On
No.
number
No,
four-
no.
Oh,
4B?
yeah, that's
No.
a good question.
Thank you.
Neither one.
Okay. Next, thank you, Ms. Dickerson. Next, we have third reading items. Item number 5, 15-35MA, Cynthia Weatherford, RSHD to LI, 1.2.
Chairman, move to approve.
Got a motion for approval. Mr.
Chairman.
Properly second.
Mr. Chairman.
Discussion, Mr. McDonough.
Yep. I believe Mr. Washington was going to make a motion, although he's tied up, but there's some additional information that Mr. Washington had requested from the applicant in this case, and we are still waiting for that information to come from the applicant, so we
Motion for
would...
deferment.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I got a substitute motion for deferral. It's been properly second. Deferral's non-debatable. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Next, we have item number 6, second reading item, an ordinance amending the Richland County Code of Ordinance, Chapter 17, Motor Vehicles and Traffic, Article 2, General Traffic and Parking Regulations, Section 17-10, Parking in Residential and Commercial Zones of the county, so as to prohibit the parking of motor vehicles in the front yard in certain residential zoning districts.
Mr. Chair.
Chair, entertain a motion. Ms. Dixon.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we send this item to the Ordinance Review Committee for proper venting.
Second.
Okay, I got a motion to send this back to ordinance review.
No, send two.
Send to.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. It's been properly second. Discussion. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. That motion carries. Next, we have the report of the Development Service Committee. Ms. Dixon.
Item number 7, resolution encouraging all utility companies that own and/or operate transmission line right-of-way in Richland County to adopt integrated vegetation management technique as set out by ANSI Standard A300. You could find all that information on page 29 through 58 of your agenda. The committee is recommending approval on this item.
Okay, you heard the committee's recommendation. Discussion. Mr. Washington.
Let me ask you, utility companies, now, there are some landowners that a lot of utility companies cut through their properties. And sometimes they have agreements with the utility company, they can still utilize, the property with regards to farming and any other agricultural activity. How would this impact that activity?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to ask Mr. Madden to address this. He's been staffing this item.
Brandon Madden, Research Manager. And you're, Mr. Washington, you're referring to item 7?
Right.
Yes.
So,
Really, 7 and 8.
okay, yeah, so
7 and
8,
8.
because I think 8 was the one that was approved out of committee, the resolution.
That's 7. It's
7
7 on
on
the
that.
agenda.
Well.
I know they flip it around on this one, I know.
Okay, 7. So the 7 was approved, and essentially this resolution is just encouraging utility companies to use the ANSI standards. The majority of utility companies have existing easement with those property owners. This wouldn't affect theirs at all because it's not changing their actual policy. It's just asking for a resolution encouraging them to use the ANSI standards with their policies that they currently have. So it wouldn't really impact the ability of people to traverse through those easements or right-of-ways.
Right, but, and I'm gonna go to 8, but if you say indigenous flowers and plants, and if I'm a farmer and that plant is detrimental to my operations, are we forcing the utility company to, plant? Is there a buffer that we need to put in place? I mean, these are the things we needed to consider if we're gonna, implement this, because there may be some issue with indigenous plants as opposed to a crop that I'm putting down there and I'm utilizing.
Yeah, to my knowledge, with the easement agreements that the utilities companies have, that's really not an issue. What utility companies do is they use EPA-approved herbicides to go in and treat specific woody species of plants. So the indigenous plants already are growing there, so it wouldn't impact the farmers and those that border those easements. It's a part of their agreements that utility companies have with those farmers.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a substitute motion that we defer this item till I can get clarity on how this will impact people who have easements in utilizing that property.
Okay, that's the substitute motion is for deferral. It's been properly second. Deferral is non-debatable. All in favor of deferral signify by raising your hand.
In favor, Dixon, Malinowski, Jackson, Pierce, Rush, Livingston, Dickerson, Washington, Manning, Jeter.
Any opposed, like sign?
Oppose, Rose.
That motion carries.
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Dixon.
Miss, I'd like to ask one question.
Yes, ma'am.
You want to defer this to when?
When's our next council?
The next council
I mean,
meeting?
as long as you can give me the information and we can have a discussion about it.
Yeah.
Because, my concern is how it's going to impact people who have easements and their farming operation. That's where I'm at.
All right.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Ms. Dixon.
Clarification, are we deferring 7 and 8 or just 8?
I think both.
Both of them, because you're asking for a resolution.
Okay, let me get that was for, we were on item 7. Let me get a
item
motion for Ms.
My understanding, when we took this up in committee, 7 and 8 were put together, and what the end result was, is that was approval of a resolution to be sent forward, and the resolution is in our agenda. That's all. So it was not going to affect anyone. It was a resolution to encourage the companies to do these standards that Mr. Rose brought forward.
Mr. McDonald.
They were
Yes.
combined, 7 and 8 together.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Malinowski is correct. Out of committee came item number 7, and in essence, item number 8 goes away. It was incorporated, just as Mr. Malinowski indicated, into item 7, and the resolution is all out of committee that's coming before the council.
So that is why I asked the question, we need to approve the resolution and do away with 8.
Yes, that's correct.
Mr. Chairman, point of clarification.
Yeah.
We need to go back and redo the agenda, reconsider the agenda.
Yeah. No, we have to you would have to go back and reconsider that item because we already took action on that.
Mr. Chair, let me ask you a question. Are we debating or?
No.
No, that, we already took action on that. We're trying to get clarification on moving forward item 8 at this point.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, I'm not legal, but, well, I'm not the attorney, but I think with item number 8, since it is no longer on the table, I think you could just table it, and it would, I believe that would take care of it. But I'll defer to Mr. Smith.
What, Mr. You have a concern about that, Mr.
No, I
Okay.
That's
Second.
It's been, to table item 8, it's been properly second. The motion on the table is to table item 8, it's been properly second. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Next, we have the report of the, is that Ms. Dixon?
concludes.
Thank you, Ms. Dixon. Next, we have the report of the Administration and Finance Committee. Mr. Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We took up 2 items earlier tonight. Item 9, changes to policy on requiring employees to sign documents, was deferred to our next meeting to obtain additional information from the HR director. Item number 10, the motion to increase the daily inmate per diem for applicable jurisdictions was approved unanimously, so the recommendation is for approval of that item.
You heard the committee's recommendations for approval. Any discussion? All in favor of that recommendation, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries.
That
Mr.
concludes the
Pierce.
report of the Administration of Finance.
All right. Yeah, 2 of them?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
That's it.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Pierce. Next, we have the report of the Rules and Appointments Committee. Mr. Malinowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item number 11, Animal Care Advisory Committee. 2 vacancies. It was not on the Rules and Appointments Committee agenda, therefore it is going to be on the next one. Item number 12, notification of appointments. Airport Commission, 3 vacancies. The committee recommended unanimously to appoint B. Stuart Hope, C. Cecil D. Hannibal, and D. Tally Parham Casey.
Okay, you heard the committee's recommendation. Discussion.
I apologize, Mr. Malinowski. Repeat those again. You said B?
B, C, and D.
Yeah.
Oh, so-
Well, I think it's something about discussion.
Okay, you heard the committee's recommendation. Any discussion? All in favor of that recommendation signify by raising your hand.
In favor, Dixon, Malinowski, Rose, Jackson, Pierce, Rush, Livingston, Dickerson, Washington, Jeter.
Any opposed, like sign?
Oppose, Manning.
That motion carries. Mr. Malinowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item number 13, Richard Memorial Hospital Board, 2 vacancies. The committee recommended in favor of appointing Mr. James Wheeler, letter B, and letter E, Mr. James Best.
Okay, you heard the committee's recommendation. Discussion. Yep.
Chairman, I would suggest that we vote on these separately. I know that takes time.
Okay.
All right.
Never mind. Time we can vote on.
Huh?
Mr. Chairman.
One second.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, for clarification for everyone, there are going to be 2 more vacancies the next time around, and anybody not selected now will be eligible and carried over for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Whenever we return.
Next meeting.
Yeah, the next
rules
council meeting, yeah.
Okay, that's good.
Okay. You heard the committee's recommendation. All in favor of that recommendation signify by raising your hand.
In favor, Dixon, Malinowski, Rose, Jackson, Pierce, Rush, Livingston, Dickerson, Washington, Manning, Jeter.
Any opposed, like sign? That motion carries. Mr. Malinowski.
Mr. Chair, that concludes my report.
All right. Next, we have the report of the Hospitality Ad Hoc Committee. Chair, Mr. Washington.
Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, I would like to defer that after executive session. I'm still trying to clear some information up from staff.
Okay. Yeah, that's the motion on the table. It's been properly second. Discussion. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Next, we have citizens' input.
Don't have a sheet yet.
Citizens' input must pertain to items not on the agenda.
Thank you.
All right, we have two citizens signed up to speak. The first is Ms. Helen Taylor Bradley. If you can come forward, state your name and address for the record, and you have up to 2 minutes to speak.
Good evening, Chairman. I'm Helen Taylor, Chairman and council members. Helen Taylor Bradley. I reside at 1916 Martin Luther King Boulevard, Hopkins, South Carolina. I'm just coming tonight to ask a question. Today, at the press conference, it was said that we were having another audit done. And the audit that DOR, I would think would be a good audit because they're competent in doing audits. And I'm just wondering, why are we spending more money to do another audit when basically we were saying today that we only need clarity? So if we need clarity on what their findings are, why are we going through a whole nother audit to get the same finding? Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Bradley. Next, we have Ms. Wendy Brawley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of council. My name is Wendy Brawley. I live at 217 Sagemont Drive in Hopkins, and I am here again on behalf of the Hopkins and Lower Richland Citizens United. As you know, we have been engaged in a very protracted and long and legal even disagreement with county about the installation of a sewer project in our community. It's interesting how the day's events really all tie together to what we are observing is becoming a very disturbing pattern for council, and that is the inability to be forthright and totally transparent with constituents. The public has a right to know. We have fought for a very long time to get basic information. It always comes to us late. It always comes to us after being forced. And it looks like this pattern is spreading itself into other council doings. We elect the council to represent us. We expect transparency, not after the fact, but prior to the votes being taken. When the sewer project was presented to us, it was presented to us as a done deal. That was the way it was presented, and it was sign up now and get it for free, at least your tap on. We have found that little of that has been free, most of it is not, and more importantly, the citizens in Lower Richland don't need it, don't want it, and can't afford it. So we've been as open and honest as I think we can be. We will continue to be that way until a decision is ultimately made. Hopefully it hasn't been made without our knowledge, even though we are being told it has, because the citizens do have a right to oppose this project. And we do have a right to say what our future looks like in Lower Richland. We don't want this bill. Many people cannot afford it, and really haven't even gotten over the traumatic problem that they existed for our Lower Richland area with the flood. And now we're being asked yet again to make another accommodation. Transparency starts here, not with the citizens, but with you all, and then with us, hopefully, as you do your business on our behalf. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Brawley. That public That citizens input is now closed. Next, we have executive session. Mr. Smith, if you can state those items one more time, please.
Mr. Chairman and members of council, those items are TRC Propco Inc. versus SCDOT et al. And transportation sales tax expenditures.
Okay. Chair, entertain a motion.
Chair, before we move forward, I still have a question about item 14. What did we decide to do with that item?
To bring it up after executive session.
I got to get with staff.
Why did that item go back to the committee? See, that item was on, isn't that the same item that was on our last full council agenda? Where we at that, because I thought we was taking it up, remember last time we deferred that to the end of the meeting, and we went into executive session to talk about it, and we came out and we said we're gonna take it up, we would take up the main item. So if it's on a full council agenda, why would it go back to a committee?
Mr. McDonald?
Well, I'll try to explain that.
If you look on page
Mr.
16 in the minutes, for example, you see that item, we
Right.
clearly deferred action until the end of the executive session, because we talked about.
Right. I think the problem is, Mr. Livingston, the intent was at the last meeting to come out of executive session and take the item up. It didn't get taken up. So there was no vote at the last meeting on the 8th for item 14. And item 14, just for clarification, there are actually two items there that you're voting on. One is 14A, the Destination Park Funding Plan. If you remember, that one was deferred at the last meeting pending the first reading of the bond ordinance. And then item 14, sub number 1A, is the actual bond.
I'm ready to move on, but I just.
Bond ordinance itself.
I'm ready to move on. Just historically, items don't come before a full, they usually come back on the full council agenda. They don't go to a committee once the council takes action.
And you're right. These would have come to you regardless of whether there'd been a committee meeting or not. I think the committee meeting was called by the chair of the committee, but these two items would have been before you, whether that committee meeting had occurred or
Well,
not.
let me clarify the point. We had hospitality tax committee meeting on Tuesday, September the 22nd. And out of that committee, the action was Mr. Rush moved, seconded by Mr. Washington, to hold it in committee. Subsequently, we did not have, because of the flooding, we didn't have a ad hoc committee meeting since that time, correct? And that's why that's why I wanted to get clarity on it.
I thought we moved it out of committee. Because we were supposed to take it up.
That's why I said let's get clarity. That's why I said let's defer it.
Yeah,
And get clarity on it
it was
before
supposed
we
to come out.
report on it.
Good evening, Roxanne Anchetta, Assistant County Administrator. At the September Ad Hoc Committee meeting, Mr. Washington, the committee actually recommended approval of the funding plan that's in tonight's agenda, and that would have been placed on the next council agenda, but because of the flood, we deferred it, and then we kept deferring this item as well as the bond ordinance for the water park. So it was deferred and deferred and deferred, so that's why it's finally coming back before you this evening. Does that sort of help?
That's why I wanted to defer it, so we can talk.
Okay, we can chat.
And we're going to pick it up after the executive session.
Okay,
That was the only
all right. All right, so a motion for executive session? Was there a motion on the table for executive session? Got a motion, it's been properly second for executive session. All in favor of executive session signify by saying aye. Any opposed? That motion carries.
It's not gonna